Welcome to the Portico 5 Shifts webinar. At Portico, we help school districts just like yours leverage the talent and programs they already have to solve the biggest issues they face. At Portico, we believe you don't need more of anything. You just need the coaching and community to make what you already have work. During our time, you're going to hear from 5 school leaders about the shifts they made to transform their schools into thriving hubs of learning and community.
Shift 1 is uproot, rethink, and rebuild. If your school leaders are being honest with themselves and you, they know the system isn't working and it's past the stage of putting on another Band-Aid. Here's why. The concept of school was invented 150 years ago and hasn't really been reassessed or revised since. Students find little connection between school and their real lives. They're asking questions like, what does this have to do with me? They're saying things like, I'll never use this in real life. This is a complete waste of time. And more, in a sense, they're right. The school system was built for a different time. It was the Industrial Revolution, where obedience and conformity were valued because schools were designed to create a specific type of worker. Segregation was still going to be a thing for another 100 years. Not only could women not vote, they weren't even legally considered people under the law. School hours were built around the farm work students had to perform at home at the beginning and end of the day. That's if you were white. If you were Black, chances are you didn't go to school at all. We're trying to take something very broken and we're just asking it to do more and more, stuffing new programs into a very old system and somehow expecting it to perform better. But no one has taken it apart and really looked at what's worth keeping. Meanwhile, testing is really geared to white and privileged students. In fact, the approaches to discipline and student achievement are rooted in ideas and practices that center whiteness. We do a terrible job of social emotional learning, although we talk about it a lot, and we completely skip over culturally responsive practices, which only makes things worse. What we're doing doesn't resonate with students. They can't relate to it, so we are literally standing between students and their learning, creating barriers and obstacles instead of creating hooks and bridges. Instead, the leaders under your charge buy program after program, hoping to fix things. Maybe you do too. They're programmed to death. They don't need another one. They have initiative fatigue. They're exhausted because they keep making these tweaks. They can't take one more thing. People keep adding more to their plates without taking anything off. They go into programs feeling like it's going to fail, just like all the others. You know what? Your leaders don't need another program. They need 2 things. They know the system's broken. What they need is validation that it's broken and the right community to work with them to build a better system. They need something that will make sense of all the programs and initiatives they already have. They need something that will give them clarity on who they are as a community. Changing the culture that leaves a lot of students behind to one where Black and brown students can excel is doable, and it's within your grasp. And how we do that is by prioritizing our Black and brown students. That means in the classroom, we need to create and support culturally responsive content, curriculum, and lessons. And outside of the classroom, we need to create equitable approaches to discipline and even inclusive approaches to leadership. In a few moments, we'll hear from our first Portico school leader over at Ocean View High School, where she saw significant gains in graduation rates for all students over a 3-year period, but particularly with English language learners and students with disabilities.
I would say being a high school principal is probably the hardest job in education for a variety of reasons, and it's super easy to feel like you're on an island all by yourself. Being able to connect with other principals that were going through the exact same thing that I was going through during COVID was amazing. It was a game changer, being able to learn from them, hear that I was not alone in everything that I was going through. I wasn't the only one on an every other day basis that said, can I do this anymore? I'm not sure if I have the ability to get our school through this. And just to be able to, even work with people that were not currently in that seat and just having them ask questions and making us think and work together as a group was absolutely an amazing experience. But I think that the biggest thing that we needed to rethink and rebuild was our structure of how we supported students. And knowing that we had something really good, we had core values, which you don't see in the educational world very often. Things like family and relationships and character and excellence. We had 5 solid core values that we needed to bring back out, and those were created by the entire staff when I was an assistant principal at the school. So we needed to bring those back out front and center. I mean, the slogan at Ocean View is can't spell love without OV. You gotta live it, you gotta breathe it, and you have to let students and families know that, hey, we're in this together, we're gonna be fine, we're gonna get through it. There's gonna be low points, there's gonna be high points, and that's totally okay. We need to learn how to get through those and be resilient together to get on the other side. Again, getting that coaching from Portico and getting that help to see these are the changes, this is how we need to rebuild, this isn't how we need to just keep growing as a group. We had a lot of great things. We didn't need to start over. We just kind of needed to put the pieces in place and get that foundation and then kind of build up from there.
Shift 2 is help them find their people. You know what your people are going through. They feel alone, and you know what that aloneness feels like. The weight of the world is on your shoulders. You're the decider. Everything ultimately falls to you, which means you wear every mistake. You don't get the glory of all the successes, but you do get to own the stink. People are second guessing you, and sometimes even working at cross purposes, undermining you because they don't have all the info or the experience that the leader has. Maybe you want to reach for advice from a counterpart or bounce an idea off of someone, but you have no one to turn to that you can trust. And if you confide in the wrong person, it could open up a world of hurt. We've heard that from principals who've asked for advice from a colleague and it came back to haunt them. You're literally throwing them to the wolves, and it's even worse for your new people. And there are real-world consequences. It's stressful, and it ends marriages. Divorce rates are really high amongst education leaders. And it takes a toll on their mental and physical health. And it's not just them. Their families and kids suffer because they have nothing left to give. They're drained. Is that who you want to be as an employer? And because so many leaders are leaving and new ones are trying to do too much, it's like you have a revolving door. The numbers aren't lying. 50% of teachers are thinking of leaving. 50% of principals are thinking of leaving. What are you going to do if you lose 50% of your principals and you're competing with every other school system trying to find the best talent? We put a community around your leaders so they have others to reach out to. People who've gone through what they've been through or can help them think problems through. The people we put together and the space that we've created are safe so that people can share more meaningfully and get better help. And it makes all the difference in the world. Take Rancho Minerva.
I don't really work in low that well. It's not like my favorite spot, so I really try hard not to get there. But I can tell you that a lot of my low point conversations came when I was working with my coaching team, because I was a really safe space because they don't have any play in the district. And when you're new, you don't know who to trust. You don't know who's gonna tell on you or who's gonna share your dirt or your crud or your mistakes. And I just didn't have that built in the beginning. And so I really relied heavily on my coach because I knew they didn't have any dog in the fight. Having Portico come into my professional life has been really one of the most magnificent things that it was unexpected. When I got the job in Vista, they said, oh, we're gonna give you a coach. And I was like, sure, whatever. We know about coaches, they're gonna come and go. And I was like, had no idea what I was going to be getting. And for the last couple of years, it's been a really life-changing experience because I was struggling because I was new to the district. I was new to the school, I was new to the role, and I've only been a COVID principal. So I don't even know what it's like to be like a normal principal in a normal school year. And I use all those terms loosely now because I don't even know what those mean anymore. And so Portico kind of came in and really level set me to like have this relationship where I wasn't the only one having these struggles. And it was such a great relationship, especially meeting with my colleagues from Northern California, from MLK Junior High School, and Angela. Like, her school is where my school will be. And it's so cool to see like where I'm gonna be. And there's nobody around here that's kind of in the same set as I am, but they were. And they are different now, and I love that. And so it's really exciting to be able to meet with her once a month. I have my meeting tomorrow. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to see her. She's amazing.
Shift 3 is get busy on the right stuff. Here's what a lot of school leaders get wrong. They focus on the wrong things. They deal with the surface issues, the things they can easily see, but they ignore the underlying issues and drivers. So, as a result, they have no time for what's important. They're constantly pulled into emergencies. A couple of teachers have tested positive for COVID. They can't find any substitutes. They have an angry parent standing in the office yelling, and the coach is upset because their game got canceled. They're running from one disaster to another, and at the end of the day, they haven't been able to move anything of real importance forward. That happens day after day, week after week, year after year. Nothing gets done. So they slap things together that make no sense or that can backfire, and they can end up looking a little like this anti-drug initiative that made its way through schools until a clever 10-year-old realized that the message, "too cool to do drugs," changed completely when the pencil got sharpened. Things slide and go undone. We all want to set up our students for success, especially our Black and brown students. But because most schools aren't getting busy on the right stuff, nothing is really changing. School cultures stay toxic, and too many students continue to be left behind. Everyone is suffering. We keep doing the same things over and over again, even though they're not working. Great initiatives languish. How many schools and districts have had to pull out of important initiatives, even around things like equity, because the program that they threw together was going to do more harm than good? Has anyone ever told you that they wish they hadn't even started an initiative because the way it rolled out had the opposite effect and even turned people against it? They get hit with avoidable attacks and self-inflicted wounds from all sides, from teachers, unions, media, students, community organizations, neighbors, and parents. And in the heat of the moment, they end up saying and doing things that make things worse or come back to haunt them. Good people leave looking for better opportunities and a place to really make a difference because the school's culture is working against them, not for them. It's a barrier instead of something that unites everyone around a common purpose and vision. Then you're left having to find yet more new people from an ever-shrinking pool in competition with everyone else. And all of this leads to more fires that get in the way of doing what's really important. What happens when your principals get busy on the right stuff? They break old patterns that were getting in the way. They find themselves with more time. That means you do too. Everyone can get more done. Everyone's happier. People feel more fulfilled in their work because they're actually able to make a difference. Everyone's moving in the same direction because they have a map and they're excited about the destination. They want to be a part of it because it's purposeful. That means less staff turnover and fewer days lost to stress and illness. Let's hear what our friends at Merced have to say.
My experience here runs deeply, and historically speaking, this place has always been about community and support, and it's kind of lost that over the years. You know, you have conversations with people, whether they be veteran staff members, about how they're feeling about the direction that the school's been taking, or and then you shift that and you get to a brand new teacher and you ask them if they can identify or even verbalize what they feel the direction of the school is, and they can't. So I think that having a clear direction has been an issue here on our campus for a little while. Like I was saying before, our school has a rich tradition and history. But I think for the last few years, I just in talking to some of the staff members here and just also having worked here, I think we just weren't exactly clear on the direction that we were taking. But as a school administrator, there are so many influences that go into that sometimes it can get a little overwhelming depending on what's going on.
Shift 4 is move from me to we. Here's what me looks and feels like. Principals fall into the trap of trying to do too much and too often end up being the center of everything. That can lead to an undefined, often bland culture, and it usually leaves everyone feeling disconnected and not really part of something bigger, especially your students and families who quickly become disengaged. As a result, everyone starts acting in their own self-interest and not as part of a community. The principals are left trying to shift the culture of the school alone and impose something. That means it's all about the principal. So if they leave, the void is devastating. And more often than not, the culture feels forced and not something that people really feel part of. Staff turns against your principals, and they end up resisting new initiatives because the principal acted unilaterally and the staff just isn't invested, which means your principals have no direct in the building support. And they end up spending late nights and lots of wasted time trying to reinvent the wheel to create something that already exists. Schools become at odds with the communities that they're in and have no idea how to build relationships. Sometimes they become targets or even scapegoats, and often they make decisions that the community can't support, and then they really run the risk of becoming a PR nightmare or on the national news. This happens all the time, and it's almost a matter of when, not if, it'll happen to one of your schools. But it doesn't have to. Not if they move from me to we. Here's what we looks like. People feel connected. There's less fighting among staff. The culture feels easy because it sustains itself. It's not up to the principal alone. It's easier to get and retain great talent. Students will come to the principal first with problems and not the media. Parents feel like they're a part of the learning community and work with you instead of against you. Your leaders are building a lasting legacy that sustains long after that principal's gone. Schools become the hub of the community instead of the inconvenient stranger. Let's hear about the shift from me to we at Fountain Valley High School.
Yeah, culture is an interesting thing. There is culture that you inherit and culture that you build. And as an administrator, when you come into a new school, it's learning the culture, it's learning the traditions, but from one school year to the next, schools change dramatically. And when you're a new person, you have to learn those things and value traditions and value legacy. So for me, it was a lot of that learning effort. And I don't have people that I can really commiserate with while I'm at school because no one wants to really hear that. They want your leaders to be stoic. They want you to be when the storm is blowing outside, to be that person that's going to lead them through the storm. So they don't want to see their leaders as people who are necessarily vulnerable. So as much as we like to think that we are truly on a level playing field, when it's all good, the team's winning. When it's all bad, it's my fault as the principal. So for me, the biggest anxiety was that we truly felt disconnected and alone. We were faced with problems that we've never been faced with before. It was new for everyone. And so there wasn't someone who could come in and say, hey, I've been doing pandemic for 30 years, let me tell you how to navigate it. We were all faced with being someone that couldn't answer the questions, that we did really feel more alone in our careers, more isolated in our careers than ever before. My motto when it's bad, when it's tough out there, it's Q-tip. It's quit taking it personal. This isn't us as an individual. This is the world, the environment, the challenge that we face. It's not us as an individual. So when we stop blaming someone else or blaming something that we can't control, and we roll our sleeves up and we take advantage of the time and support each other and work in a common direction, we'll get through it. You know, I think oftentimes leaders have a reputation of someone with fragile ego, and they need to be out front, they need the spotlight. And I think good leaders are the ones that are vulnerable enough to say, I don't need the spotlight. It doesn't need to be about me and what I want. It's about the we. It's when you have that epiphany, when you truly get to that point of a constant we mentality, you feel like you've made it. It's not so much about the program or the policy or the new facility or the technology or the learning dynamic. It's all those little pieces that come into, you know, making great schools. But truly it's about a mentality, a philosophy of we that will make you a great school for the years to come.
Shift 5 is invest in coaching. This is the only industry where coaching isn't the norm. In business, it's a given. In fact, 84% of CEOs said coaches had helped them avoid costly mistakes. 84% of CEOs grew into their positions more quickly because of coaching. 69% of CEOs said that they were making better decisions because of their coaches. Your principals are essentially the CEOs of their schools. You need to support them the way that CEOs are supported in the outside world. Think about it. Everyone in the building is getting coaching and support except the leaders. Who does better? Students with teachers who invest in helping them learn when they're stuck, or those with teachers who ignore them? Staff when leaders help them through problems, or staff who are left to fend for themselves? The only people who aren't getting coaching are the people who need it most, the ones helping everyone else. Your school leaders. How sustainable is that? How do you expect them to grow? And who do you think will be able to get and keep the best talent? The districts where leaders are supported or where they're left to sink or swim on their own? Dave Ritchie at Valley High knows exactly what it's like to reach out for coaching right when you need it.
I was the 5th principal in 8 years, so I had a staff that was in no way willing to trust me because they assumed that I'd be heading out on my horse soon. And so when you don't know where you're going and you have chaos and you have 5 principals in 8 years, hey, leave me alone. You figure this out, right? If I'm a teacher, I'm the same way. Get it figured out and then I'm going to join a team. But until then, I'm going to hunker down and do my thing in the classroom. So for all the things that I thought I could do coming in as the guy, the leader of the school, I've always been a humble guy. And so I don't know if that comes from insecurities or where that comes from, but I surround myself with people that I think are smarter than me, that I know I can rely on. And so it has never been a problem for me to look for coaching or mentoring or expertise outside of what I feel like my skill sets are. But so many things needed to be addressed, and immediately that it really drove me to say, how am I going to get the help to do this? It's not going to exist here, and does the district have the resources to assist in that? So I think that's at a place where not only me knowing that I didn't know everything, but me recognizing that the work was huge and it would require some outside support. And so, how do we turn something around? If there's clearly no pride in that, what does that look like? What are some of those solutions? And so the partnership there put us on a place to start to talk about, well, here's what we've learned. How can we now start to create that structure, that system for everybody to work inside? And then when we do that, isn't it easy to communicate to our stakeholders what we're doing and be transparent about the process? Establish benchmarks that everybody understands. Here's what it looks like when we're making progress. Here's what it doesn't look like. And so all of those things began to become crystal clear in a lot of ways. The community saw it, our parents saw it, our parent engagement grew. We had about 25 active parents when I got there. When I left, there were about 200 that were, and not enough, but certainly growth. in that area. And so when I think about those successes, again, I don't feel like I own that. I feel like I've been a part of that. Maybe I was the driver in terms of steering the ship, but in no way do I feel like I'm the one responsible. But you could feel on that campus the turnaround, the commitment to the kids. And to me, when I look back, I thought that wasn't Dave. That was Dave understanding what Dave didn't know and accessing, the experts, learning along the way, ultimately always owning it regardless of the input. And so as a matter of knowing your school and knowing yourself and matching those up, and if really the focus is on student outcomes, getting outside of yourself or your ego or whatever it is that may be an obstacle for you, and grabbing onto help where help can be found to, again, make sure that kids reach those outcomes that have been established.
You've just heard how making these 5 shifts can lead to massive transformation and growth for school leaders and the students they serve. We're excited to welcome you to the Portico community, and we look forward to partnering with you to transform the student experience.